Hello, hello, everyone, and welcome to In Time. My name is Nicholas Lamar Soutter, and with me, as always, is Ansgar Odinson.
Hey, the prettier half of
That's the way it hurts because it's true. You
That's
have
okay,
to
you're the
say that on
brains,
air.
you know.
I understand you say that on air, and it's
It's
just like,
okay, you're the brains, I know. Any idea I've ever gotten came from that.
oh, and thank you all for joining us. I think this is we were saying earlier, probably should have covered it sooner. I think this is
Hmm.
a much more important topic than most people give it credit for. And I think we will definitely start with it in a minute. Until then, we do have some breaking news items. They're just minor, sort of more house cleaning. At present, the volcano, which we've been keeping an eye on, has appears to have cooled down a bit. When I say cooled, I don't mean temperature. I mean it's not it's not appearing as active. That could be a good thing or could be a bad thing. And
Unfortunately, you can't just go have a look at what's happening underneath a volcano. Volcanologists, they have to listen basically to certain harmonics and make a really good guess at what might be happening. And that's
well,
just, you know,
we do have guests here who are willing to go inside to a volcano. I've spoken with Landon on the phone, and I've been like, "Oh, by the way, where are you?" He's like, "Oh, I'm inside a volcano."
that's awesome. That's awesome.
You do you. Have fun. So, all right. So, and we're gonna stay on that, like we had said before, and then also, the House of Representatives has voted to send the articles of impeachment to the President of the United States. We covered already for those who are going to get into it and like, oh, he hasn't been impeached because the articles weren't sent. Yes, he has. Doesn't need to send the articles. And all but one constitutional scholar seems to feel that way. And that one is the one all the trolls are listening to. So, Nancy Pelosi has elected on 7 lawyers to prosecute the case. I don't know who they are, but I got some issues with that.
That seems like a bit too, the old adage, too many cooks in the kitchen. That just, aren't thinking they're just like stepping on each other's toes and in each other's way?
That would be my guess. The too many cooks and yeah, that adage was the first thing that I thought of. You when you have like a legal team, problems can compound, and then you get people who want to prosecute it a different way, different strategies, and then you're fighting with each other. People start undermining each other. It gets to be very, very difficult. I'm curious to know who the 7 are. I'm curious, maybe one's in leading, and then the others are advisors. I don't know, but that was surprising. At any rate,
Didn't that happen on
it.
both the prosecution side and the defense side of the OJ case? You know,
I think yeah. Well, on
uh,
on the prosecution side, they did better when it was just one. I think when they added Darden, he was very good, but the element changed and it became a bit more of a show. And I think they were incapable of dealing with that. And I think one lawyer actually probably could have dealt with that better than two.
no.
On the defense, yes, they won, but on the flip side, uh, there was infighting like there was no tomorrow. It wasn't until sort of a little bit more than halfway through that they finally really got their shit together and decided who was in charge. They had some immense powerhouse attorneys, and they all wanted to handle it differently. F. Lee Bailey, one of the probably the greatest lawyers in U.S. history. Johnny Cochran, also spectacularly fucking good. Very different approach. Very different
Yeah.
approach in both those cases. And they had on it was Dershowitz. It was oh god. But now it did work, so we'll see. But that's not more isn't necessarily better. So we'll see what happens with that. Um, and then, did you say you had something too? I think there was one more that I'll try to remember what it was.
Yeah,
But what was?
here in LA, interestingly enough, a Delta Airlines vented. It was part of an emergency procedure. They vented a bunch of their fuel, and quite unfortunately, they were rather close to LAX, so they were flying low, and they dumped it over a schoolyard full of children. So there are 44 children currently being treated for injuries and several staff and adults. So, ouch.
Where was this?
Los Angeles. Not far from not from where I live actually. I can walk
Yeah,
to LAX.
well, listen, you know what? It's serious, and I probably shouldn't make light. But the first thing that went through my mind was, okay, one more reason not to go to LA.
One of many, many reasons. The traffic
And
alone will
now
kill
they're
you.
dropping jet fuel on you,
Yeah.
which obviously that's not a joking matter, but
Oh,
well, and I'd always said this. I think we drastically overreacted to 9/11,
mhm.
and I had said that, and yeah, I think you're about to say you agree.
Just a little bit. I
Okay.
mean, we gave up a bunch of our privacy. We gave up a whole lot of freedoms. We agreed to be treated as a criminal without any before even being a suspect in any kind of a crime. So yeah, we drastically overreacted. I mean, we're still
Which is
dealing with the
just
fallout from the Patriot Act, which in part empowered Obama to create the massive, spy state that he did, spying on our own citizens. Yeah,
the warrantless wiretapping, the original Patriot Act, which this nearly cleared. Thank God somebody they got a hold of this. But the one also included that postal workers, any federal employee that goes around just sort of was empowered to spy on people. If you saw something suspicious, there would be a reporting system, and so now you got postal workers who are basically going to be incentivized to peep in people's windows and then they were saying too we also want truckers and stuff like that to and sitting there going, none of these things would have actually prevented that attack. None of those things would have, none of the proposals would have had anything to do with maybe they'll make you feel safer, they don't. And then, of course, there's what we did to every other country in the world uh, on the grounds that, well, we've been attacked, so we can, just implement
yeah,
unilateral foreign policy, preemptive war, the whole 9 yards. That was the term we were looking for last night and about defense. It was preemptive war.
yes.
Uh,
Well, and it was the Red Scare all over again. It really was.
yeah, it was insane. And the reality is, Osama bin Laden had been trying to hit us for, by that point, was it, I think, 10 years, maybe 20, at least a decade, maybe more. And, he tried to do all sorts of things and he failed time and time and time and time and time again. He was going to get one right. And this one happened largely because of very small failures at multiple points that accumulated into this being successful. Fix any one of them and this wouldn't have happened. Fix any one of them, and you could actually drastically improve. Fix the communication between the FBI and CIA, which have very different roles. They don't like talking to each other, and they step on each other's toes all the time. And find a way to get those two organizations to work better together. They withheld information because they're so pissed at each other. That's a problem. And then the biggie that I was thinking was actually reinforce the cockpit doors. You never open them during a flight, and every airplane has the ability, which a lot of jets don't actually. A lot of the Boeings don't have the ability to dump. What it's not just dump fuel, but it's dump fuel with a 30-minute reserve.
Hmm.
So any but just it, oh, we've been taken over by terrorists. Poof, you flick a switch, and now the plane can stay in the air for 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Harris can do what he wants, but the plane's got 30 minutes. And even if it does crash into something, there's no fuel left. That was one of the recommendations that struck me as a very common sense. We don't need to freak out, kind of, and there you could still improve security at the airport, but give me a break.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, yeah. So come to LA. We've got traffic and jet fuel raining. So and somebody pointed out, just imagine what all the crazy people are going to be saying about chemtrails after this.
oh my God. Yeah. No, Ansgar. In fact, actually, I would love to come to LA. I would love to visit you and hang out. So, we'll talk about it in 20 years.
Cool.
Um,
Yeah.
or whenever they get their fuel. Actually, what this is just kind of funny. Um, it's interesting when you have internet relationships like this because it's sort of like, you and I know each other, we get along, but we've never been physically in the same room together.
True.
But you came this close to meeting my wife, so she would have met you before I did,
Yeah.
and I know because you're the one running the pool on whether or not she's real. And I was just like, okay, you have to meet with him. And he's like, no, it's a voice actor. Once you heard her on the phone, you're like, okay,
Okay.
there is a human being there, but I'm not sure that's not Nick modulate with the voice modulator or all. It
Right?
hasn't been in the same
You might
room.
have two separate phones with two separate phone numbers.
Yep, yep, yep. And then
Mm.
it's like, oh, last minute. Oh, we didn't meet. But she's real. Of course, she's real. I'm not pulling a Columbo. No, I'm not. I'm not that clever. I'm just not. No, it's she's real. Please, everybody. That's trust me. All right. So,
Citation. Trust me, bro.
citation. Yeah. Listen, if Donald Trump can do it, if it's good enough for the NSA, Trump, it's good enough for the
Oh my
time.
god, that was his justification for the killing. Trust me, bro. Oh, by the way, that is a another piece of
Yes.
breaking news. The White House has now released an updated version of their justification for killing Soleimani, and
Oh,
the
they've
updated
clarified.
reason,
They've clarified
yes,
their yes, please, Ansgar, tell me
there
what did they yeah.
it is no, it wasn't retaliation. They did not kill him because he was actively planning. It was meant to be a deterrent to future acts of terrorism.
Ansgar?
Yeah.
Uh, uh, um, that doesn't sound like an update to me. That sounds like a complete reversal of their original position.
Yeah. That sounds like a what's that word they use when you kill somebody without justification who's like, a political leader of some kind. I starts with an A. It's they use it in conjunction with people like, oh, I don't know, a certain president who got killed at a movie at a play at opera house. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um
Well, I
yeah.
no, I don't think you should be coy with this, because the way you're talking sounds like what you mean is assassination, and
Yeah, that's the word. Yeah.
no, well, that couldn't be the word because we would never assassinate anyone. Only bad countries do that. Um,
When America does it, it's not assassination.
that's right.
Even when it's an assassination. Yeah.
Even when it's an assassination. Well, and this leaves, of course, the other interesting concern, which is that means they lied, first of all. So the
Big
administration came
fucking
out and said he was
surprise.
actively, yeah, but this is they lied, and they lied to the U.S. citizens. They lied to the world when they said we killed him because he was actively planning attacks, and shortly after he was dead, they said that multiple attacks on U.S. interests that would have cost U.S. lives had been averted explicitly because he was killed. If either of those two statements were true, this was a legit killing. This was an act. This was a falls under the rules of war, and there is zero problem with it. Neither appears to be true. They both appear to be constructed lies to justify an assassination, which is a violation of the Geneva Conventions. It's a violation of all of the acts of war that we adhere to, that we expect our enemies to adhere to when they try to, when they have complaints against us. And you know what? When Iran accidentally shot down a plane, yeah, they lied about it in the first few, hours for a day or two, and then they came clean and said, yeah, it was an accident. We're sorry. Why is it they're acting more honorably than us? I would really like somebody to explain that to me. I much prefer the notion that Iran is a fucking horrible country and we're the good guys, but when they start telling the truth and we're lying, it makes it really fucking difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. And you don't I'm sorry, you don't just go killing, world leaders because you want to deter future behavior. That's not we have laws, international laws to prevent this for very good reasons. And our friend of the show, ProLib, who was on with us to discuss all this, actually did a very good job of explaining why you don't want to normalize this kind of thing on the world stage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I saw this from Jesus, I saw this in the live. Sweet is in the live chat and she is stirring up trouble, and it's just because my wife is from Canada. I mean, yes, my wife is from Canada,
Does
you'll meet her.
does Canada even exist?
Yeah, well, she's from Australia.
Hmm.
Um So then let me do. There was one other really quick thing I wanted to do here, but I think so. What is it that you wanted to? So what? This is a great topic for today. I think we
Yes.
got Howard M. Schuster has done a $1 super chat. Thank you guys very much. We are monetized. We also and then another $2. Thank you so much, Howard. We really appreciate it, and we appreciate the support of our Patreons, those of you who super chat, and also our mods and everyone who's working on behalf of the show. So thank you all very much. And we are monetized. If you want to do super chats, we also we have you can become a member of In Time, and another $2, Howard.
Oh,
Thank you
wow.
very much.
Thank you. Thank you so
So
much.
well, it's the my wife is a refugee. She is in Canada. We're trying to get her into the United States, and he's I think assisting with that. So um, um, so yes, we've been meaning to do this show for a little while,
Mhm.
and you had set this up. Tell us about why you thought this was important and what we're going to do today.
Well, first of all, there are a few reasons why I really wanted to do this. One of this is I'm a father, and I grew up. I grew up with a mother who was very proactive in sexual education, teaching me before I ever had sex ed in school. And then when I became a parent, I was very proactive, and thankfully I was, because the kind of sex ed that my kids got in school was woefully inadequate. And there's reasons why that's important. A lot of people want to frame this as a parental rights thing, and let me tell you something. You have to sign a permission slip. So this isn't a parental rights thing. Let's get that over with before we even begin. This is not about parental rights, because that's what permission slips are for. We don't have to worry about where no one's forcing any kid to have sex ed. However, I'm a very sex positive guy. I think that education is vastly important, and I think the numbers back it up. And I want to give you guys, before we even get into the numbers and the subject and what sex ed is, some ideas of some of the strange things that, had I not been proactive in my children's sex education, some of the strange things that were told to them by their sex ed teachers. So, um, my eldest son, who often watches, um, he was told, as an example, that condoms have microscopic holes that diseases can get through, and they are ineffective, so therefore don't have sex. All right.
Yeah. Well, I think we're going to get back to that one. That's
We're
a
definitely going to be getting back to that one.
oh
That's
my
this is
God.
the precursor. He was told that some kids grind up aspirin and snort it to get high, and that this can work. We'll be getting back to that one.
Wait, it doesn't.
No. No, it gets it into your bloodstream really fast and gives you a hell of a nosebleed.
Ooh, that explains a lot of my. Okay, that that's good to know. Let me interrupt you. You're going great. I'm going to interrupt you. We have another couple of dollars from Howard M. Schuster. Thank you very much again. And I do apologize. And another $2. Oh my God, I'm just, I'm starting to wonder if he's accidentally, like, he's trying to like type in the chat, and he keeps hitting enter, and it's just
Right.
okay. I'm not going to complain though.
Now the next little bit, here's a fun one. This isn't now sex ed is often rolled in with health, right? Health education,
Hmm.
hygiene and things like that. My daughter was told that drinking milk will give you osteoporosis.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, isn't it interesting? Let's see. Give me 1 second. I'm reading a message. Okay. So,
All right. Well, you know what? I want to. We have. So Howard's been doing a few more donations. Thank you very much. We have a mod who's getting a little. Uh, what was it he said earlier? I missed it. First of all, he's getting just a little. I was like, oh, now we can pay him, because well, and listen, we could quadruple his pay. We could pay this mod with
hmm,
and he's questioning the existence of my wife, which I really don't appreciate. And
um,
nobody's gonna say his name. We're not gonna.
are you saying Tony?
Oh no, no, thank you, Ansgar. Ansgar. We don't say his name anymore. Thank you.
Why don't we say his
No,
name?
because he's a known troll,
I mean,
and we've
is he
lost
like
known.
Voldemort? You say his name, he's gonna appear in your room or something?
That would explain a lot. Um, Listen,
Uh,
listen. I mentioned his name once. He was all over my Discord. He's on the Discord. He's can't. It's like it's been like a virus. It's just really, it's really a bit more than I could handle right now. And I don't know. And I would really like to know who's the idiot who gave him a wrench.
that would be you.
We must be talking about someone else. Anyways,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, okay. So please continue.
Oh, yeah. Um, so yes, milk will give you, osteoporosis. Now, these are just a few examples of some of the wild, crazy crap that people can learn, and this is in California, right? This isn't like in some state,
This isn't
that
like
has.
Alabama or yeah.
Right. This is in California, Southern California, in the LA school district, right? So, so that's where things now, ideally, we always, whether you agree with sex ed or not, ideally, I would think we would all agree that we want education to be as factual as possible.
Mhm.
Right. The problem with sex ed in recent years, of course, is it's become more and more about um, the idea of trying to persuade kids into a certain behavior. Have you seen? I'm sure you had sex ed when you were a kid. What was it like? What are the
I
type of
don't.
things you learned?
I don't remember a whole heck of a lot about it. I will
Mhm,
say the two things I remember most about sex ed. So I was also a high school teacher for a while,
mhm,
and one of my best friends there was a coach, and he ended up also doing the sex ed for a little while. And I thought he did a spectacular job. He covered it far better than I recall. Sort of for us, it was sort of a little bit about just sort of at least at a minimum, there was a lot of coverage of the necessary medical issues. You need to look for
mhm.
testicular cancer, which I think is I mean, these are critical issues too, because
Yes.
women need to understand that they need to look, they need to get mammograms, they need to stay healthy. The way you stay healthy is a certain level of, especially because we have. We are such an industrialized country, and we have so many, sort of spectacular things. We don't have socialized healthcare. We don't have, and so if you don't know to practice some self-care and management, especially in those areas, but melanoma, looking for melanoma as well. There's a lot, but the
Mhm.
sexual ones are the ones nobody talks about. So women don't always know what they need to look for. Men certainly don't know how to look for testicular cancer. Nobody wants to talk about it. We covered a lot of those things, and these are the fallopian tubes, and we're going to label each
Yes.
little thing, and that's sort of what we got. We didn't even really cover the diseases all that much, and I was in a reasonably affluent and liberal um, school.
Which I think is an important thing to cover is some of the diseases and the
Oh,
best
oh,
preventative
it is.
measures and things like that.
Yep.
Um, So what in recent in more recent years, sex education in particular in recent years has changed a great deal. Now, see, in the 70s and the 60s, we had the big sexual revolution, and a lot of what came out of that was very comprehensive sex education. There was a big push for sex education in schools, and that's been slowly being eroded over the past few decades. And so what we're having now is abstinence training. And rather than
Oh, that sounds awfully military, actually. Which it's sort of like, okay, we are going to teach you how to be. Oh boy, abstinence
Ye
training.
yeah.
All right.
Have you ever watched one of these videos that they actually play for kids in these
I,
schools?
I've no, I've seen a lot of spoofs of videos like that. I hope they're spoofs. I don't honestly know anymore,
Well,
but I don't know enough about them to know how much of this is real. How much is it?
they say things like, "Your society has certain expectations of you, and one of those is, that you will wait till marriage." Not kidding. One of the common ones is talking
Mm.
is scare tactics like my son got about why condoms don't work. Now, the problem with this, of course, is that kids are going to have sex. They're it's just going to happen. Not every kid's going to have sex, but kids are going to have sex. And if you've told them that condoms don't work, well, guess what? They're not going to use a fucking condom. It's strange, I know.
Wow.
um Now, in some states here in the United States, sex ed is actually expressly forbidden. This has led some teachers to come up with some very clever ways of trying to teach sexual education. As an example, there is a wonderful health teacher in the state of, funny you should mention it, Alabama, I believe.
How did I know Alabama was going to come into this
Oh
conversation?
God, who teaches young men how to wink, wink, nudge, nudge, properly put on a pair of gym socks? He has to. He
No,
has
I
to.
agree he has to, and I think that's a reasonably clever thing. But we're going to read in Alabama, and they're going to blame Alabama. Maybe Alabama isn't
Mm.
responsible for this. Maybe it is. I don't know. But we are going to read teenage boy is trying to have sex with a woman with gym socks on his penis, and it's going to turn into a thing. And they're going to say, like, why do Alabamans not know any better? And then someone's going to say, well, this is the sex education they're getting. And what's the really sad part is you can say, yeah, but that's the best they can do.
Yeah. Oh,
Please
that's
continue.
now I'm having images of
You know
that.
that's gonna happen. This isn't a joke. I'm
Oh
not
my!
fucking kidding. On a long enough time scale, that's gonna happen. There's gonna be a kid who
Don't worry,
doesn't get
babe. I
nuance.
got a gym sock.
So, you
Oh.
are so beautiful. You're the most beautiful woman I've ever seen. I parked my car out back. Go back there and don't worry. Got gym socks. I don't want to make fun of. He's probably really doing an absolutely good thing,
Yeah.
and it's a net good. But you know that's going to happen. I'm just
Oh,
telling you. You know there's going to be somebody. There's going to be
kids
a
are
kid who
dumb.
doesn't get nuance.
I'm sorry, but kids are dumb. They just are, and one of
Yeah.
them is gonna be dumb enough to not get the nuance.
Trying
You
to
are
get the kid in
absolutely
gym
right.
socks, and his poor girlfriend's gonna be sitting there going like, "What are you doing?"
God forbid she's dumb enough to have bought
Oh, God,
got
you
the
had to
same
go
thing
there.
out of it.
We're gone that far. Okay. Oh,
Oh,
shoot. Hold on. I'm not even gonna bother telling you what this says. You already know.
let me guess. We're demonetized
What
permanently.
does the word? What was the word in perpetuity mean?
Oh, apparently Steve wrote the.
Steve wrote that. It's an inside joke.
Oh man.
All right.
Hmm.
All right. All right.
All
So,
right.
um, thank you all. Oh, by the way, I just want to reiterate for those of you who are joining us on In Time today. Today is January 15th. We've already covered the breaking news, and now we are letting people know that that gym socks probably are an ineffective substitute to condoms. So we do appreciate your patronage. We appreciate the people who have already put money in and know you can't get it back. Uh, Oh, we run a classy show. And well, though there was a super chat, and we've gotten way off track, but I think it's okay. Kawesa had said we got another $5 donation from Howard again. Thank you. And Kawesa, who said it's 4:30 a.m. where he is, but he's not missing out on any sex topic. Don't worry if you're looking for sexual education. Yeah, you're not missing anything.
Oh. Uh, don't come to
All
America
right,
for a
please
sex
continue.
education is the
Yeah.
one thing you can take from this show. Um, so 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 over the decades, like I said, over the last few decades, sex education as sort of an idea has been slowly eroded into a point where it's really transmuted into don't have sex, don't take drugs, sort of. I wouldn't call it education. It's more of training. They're teaching you kind of rote things. And the other thing is a lot of medical misinformation. Now, before I get into the actual sex education, I want to get into some of the medical misinformation. As an example, when my daughter was told that milk will give you osteoporosis, what what happened here is the health teacher read an article, right? And this comes from a real medical study that is studying why there are lower rates of osteoporosis in places that have less dairy, right? And one of the things that they're thinking is that certain amounts of certain kinds of dairy may basically make you so tolerant of the added calcium and things like that that it may lead to higher rates of osteoporosis if you have a sufficiently high amount of those particular kinds of dairy in your diet. Maybe. At this point there's only corollary, there's no causal link yet. But just like what the news does, the health teacher reads this thing and then, oh, look, milk causes osteoporosis. Don't drink milk. And the problem being is that we don't have a lot of clear-cut standards in at least here in America, in sex education. We have a certain curriculum, but there isn't like some kind of like, what a medical professional has. Medical professional cannot give medical advice that is, what I mean, unsubstantiated. They're legally not allowed to do that.
Yeah,
You or I can.
they're licensed. Yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah.
I can tell you to eat stink bugs and it will cure cancer. No one's coming after me legally. You know what I mean?
By the way, and that's the thing. So I taught law, and in
Mhm.
fact, actually, I was thinking about God, I forget how, but it was relevant to how when because I also coached mock trial, so we would do. Oh yeah, that's it. When we did mock trial coaches, one of our first teams, yeah, we wanted to put on, or we've seen coaches who have put on. We were tempted, we didn't do this. 20 different lawyers on, and the team collapses. So that's why. But I'm not a lawyer. I know roughly how well it works, and I can engage with lawyers very easily, and I'm comfortable in that situation. But I'm not a lawyer. Because I'm not a lawyer, I can give legal advice.
Right.
So it's just hilarious. It's hilarious that
Mhm.
people are like, Nick, are you giving legal advice? Yeah, but I'm not a lawyer, so it's okay.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is when you take on a mantle that gives you that is some kind of an authority, you now have ethical responsibilities, whereas the average citizen does not. Um, Now, there are two reasons that brings me into two reasons why I really chose to do the show. One of them is recently there's a nurse, and she goes by Nurse Holly on TikTok. I don't know if you know what TikTok is. It's like the Twitter of YouTube. It's really short little videos. You can only make
Okay.
short videos. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, and what she did is she creates videos offering medical advice as a nurse. Now the problem is that it's very religious biased. Like one of her recent ones is she actually told people giving advice on how to fight depression, and one of the ways was to pray. Um she also says don't take drugs, which offering charity could mean illicit drugs only, but when you consider the massive stigma there is against taking prescription drugs, if you're a medical professional, you have to be much more careful about how you word that.
And I'm gonna interrupt you. You know that's a pet peeve of mine. Enough
Mm-hmm.
that S.J. Thomason and I had that debate, and people do remember that debate because I take that one rather seriously.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So then she had another video. She's got lots of them, but one of her videos was, of course, a how to avoid STDs. And what does it come down to? Well, it comes down to don't have sex till marriage. And so that plus rather recently there was somebody posted on Twitter. It was a book. And it's a book for right about 10 to 12-year-olds, and it has a very cartoon picture of two people in coitus. Now you don't see penetration or anything like that. It's just two people posed in a sexual position, and there is then next to it a cross section that shows a very cartoony version of the inside of the female anatomy with the male anatomy placed inside of it. And this is a book used for sexual education in Scandinavian countries. People were freaking out, absolutely losing their minds. And one of the things is in places like Denmark, Sweden, Scandinavian countries in general, there is they have very comprehensive sex education, as shown by this book. It's just one demonstration. So I would like to offer now. What do you think that let's say Sweden. What do you think that the adolescent birth rate is compared to ours?
Oh wow, I used to have these numbers at the top of my head. I would imagine it's at least 1/10 of ours, possibly even lower. I would imagine it's 1/10 of ours. Ours used to be, if I remember correctly, about like 0.3%, and theirs would be 0.03 as a guess.
To give you an idea, our you're pretty close. 34.2 adolescent births per thousand girls. Give you an idea.
30, how many?
34.2 per thousand is how many.
34 points. So
Yeah.
I got that right.
Yes, you did. And
That's right. Okay.
then for Sweden, 5.9.
Yeah.
5.9 per
Yeah.
thousand. Tremendous drop in the rates. In
Yep.
Norway, it's 9.5, so higher, but still quite low. In Denmark, 4.5.
Jesus.
Now, some people would say, well, yeah, they have more abortion. Actually, their abortion rate is profoundly smaller too.
Yep.
So so
I'm
it's
writing all this down because I want to cover all of this. I was like, oh, we gotta do this. This is awesome.
oh my god.
I don't want to miss any. This is good stuff. This is oh.
All right. So I think that gives us a preamble for why sex education is important. But now I want to dive into you things like the cultural.
Ansgar. I'm aware we're talking about sex.
Mhm.
We've said before, you're not going to get to dive in with me. I appreciate the offer. This is going to be a professional relationship. And I think you're going to need to get that through your head
You know,
before we
scientists right now are
continue.
probing deeper into Uranus than ever before. That is a real article in the news
I,
right
I'm I,
now.
I'm reasonably sure if that were true, I'd be aware of it, and I have not detected any such intrusions. But thank you very much for
So I would
yeah.
like to, not only do I want to kind of dive into the cultural aspect, but I want to, and
Yeah.
how do we fix it? But I want to dive into a suggestion that I kind of have for my own personal idea of how to fix it.
Perfect.
Make sex ed taught by medical professionals. Then they'll be held to ethical standards and will not be allowed to give false advice, and they can be held accountable when they give bad
Did
advice.
did Uranus come into the live chat right when you said that, or he always been? That's too coincidental.
Wait, what is it, Uranus? Oh my
No,
God! Hello, hello, Titan
Titan
Uranus.
Uranus showed up literally when you said that.
Oh, that's
Um,
amazing.
he's like our other mod. We have two mods that if you say their names, they show up. You said Uranus, poof, there he is. And we've got the other mod. He showed up. I don't know how to get rid of him yet. I'm thinking like I don't know. We've tried everything. I like roach spray. I don't know. Nothing works. He's all over the place. Um, all right, perfect. Well, there's a lot of stuff there that I really to unpack.
Mhm.
I think this is marvelous
And
stuff.
didn't you have some minor breaking news before we get to really dive into all this?
I did. Thank you for reminding me. And
Mhm.
I had said too, I was just like, I think I'm forgetting something, and I did. Yeah. No, it was a tiny thing. The Russian government resigned today. So you were saying,
No big deal. Yeah. Wait. The
yeah,
entire government resigned.
well, all but one. Yes, the
I'm
Russian
gonna
government
guess it
resigned
was
today,
all but Putin.
and you get your degree in global, like international.
Uh,
Yeah, the
why?
Russian
This
government
seems weird.
resigned today. Yeah, it does seem weird. Now obviously all of these resignations were totally voluntary. None were at the point of a gun or anything like that, because But
That would never
so
happen
here's
in
what happened.
Russia.
No, Vladimir Putin was president. He was president for the maximum number of terms allowed by the Constitution. The interesting thing about their Constitution is it grants more freedoms and rights than ours does. Which is also why I take a little more seriously. People sit there and say, well, these things could never happen in the US. The Russian Constitution is better than ours in many respects. It's just Putin got a hold, and well before Putin, but it just hasn't been. I mean, they grant a right to an attorney. It's not implied as it is in our Constitution. It's actually there. It's written. But the uh, he was term limited. Putin was. So he created the position of prime minister, which they didn't have one before. He then took that position. He installed Dmitry Medvedev as the president, and he instructed Medvedev did exactly what he was told by Putin. They found an end run where Putin could actually go one more term in office. That's what he did. He became president again. Medvedev became the prime minister, and he was the prime minister. I don't know if the resignations are effective immediately, but he has also resigned. So what we have now is Putin cannot run for another term. He cannot be president for another term, but he really likes being president. So he has decided that he is going to transfer as much of the power that he has to the prime minister's office. The prime minister's office is also going to keep all his power, and they're going to transfer a lot of cabinet power there, meaning powers that Putin does not currently have are going to be transferred. So the powers he does have are going to be transferred to the prime minister's office, and powers he doesn't have are going to be transferred there. And he is not term limited as prime minister. The only entity that can stop him is the other cabinet officers who, for whatever reason, all just resigned yesterday. Actually, today.
Including that Medvedev guy.
Medvedev and Medvedev. I pronounced that correctly, explicitly because I'm so fucking pissed. You always get the name of that volcano right, but I gotta sit there and say I am good with accents, motherfucker. It's just that one. That one's okay. I'm like B level. That one's just like I don't know how the fuck you do that one, but I was like, okay, I get to pronounce some shit now.
I have Swedish
Don't say
family.
it. Don't
No.
say it. Don't say it. No volcanoes and no mods. We're just like new. Um,
Dave says you need to
all right.
say his name backwards.
The mod's name backwards.
No,
I'm pretty
whatever.
sure. I'm pretty sure the mod's name is the same thing backwards and forwards.
Mm,
Um, that's like, yeah, that's the sign of the end times. All right. So, anyways, now, so what he's going to do is, as much power as he's got now, he's transferring all of it for their next term, which is in
right.
2004, 24. all the power to the prime ministership. He will take over the prime ministership. He will almost certainly install whoever is going to be president. The president will be elected, and then he will have control over the presidency, but he'll have all his power coming through the prime ministership. So the good news is Putin is consolidating power even more. This is actually very similar to what China did not too long ago with their president. So
How close does this get him
fun.
to reviving the Soviet Union, which we know he would absolutely love?
That's a really good question. I had heard this many times that he really just like was big on the Soviet Union, this and that. And I was like, no, I think this is just personal ambition shit. And I now I've come to disagree. I think you're correct. He took the fall of the Soviet Union very personally. He was an assassin during the Soviet Union. He has killed people with his bare hands. This is not hyperbole. And it's well understood. He is a profoundly evil motherfucker.
Oh, he is a
Which,
badass. There's no ambiguity there.
oh,
He is a bad motherfucker. He just is.
yeah, he just is. He stole, what is it? He stole one of the, somebody let him see their championship ring for the NFL. And I think it was like that, one of the major guys. He just liked the ring, so he kept it.
Yeah.
Or he's just for brace. He just doesn't
Everything
give
you've
it's like what he
seen
did with
from
Crimea.
like that gang boss badass who just does whatever the fuck he wants in a movie, that really is Putin. Yeah.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
is. He is. And the fact that Trump is in so far over his fucking head with Putin. It's not even. I can't make a joke about that. That is
Well,
just.
and
He's got no
that
fucking
brings
clue.
into a serious question: what kind of a president are we going to want going forward? We're going to need someone who can navigate this kind of thing. I hate to get off our subject, but this is actually really big.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
I like Bernie. You know I like Bernie, but I don't see him
yep.
as the kind of guy that's taking on the Soviet Union 2.0 Cold War. You know what I mean? I almost feel like we need somebody who is like really close to being a war hawk, but not quite a war hawk. You know what I mean? I don't know.
No, that's actually I like the way you put that. I think I would agree with that. I think that makes a lot of sense.
In fact, I
Uh,
really didn't like a Hillary, but she might have actually been better for this particular situation.
I think there's a problem here.
Uh,
I'm sorry. I thought I was doing the show with a man named Ansgar, and if you could find him for me, I would appreciate that. Did you just say you thought Hillary could do this? I mean, I
at
agree with you.
this,
Don't get me wrong, but I know you're not a fan of Hillary. I
I
know you are
hate to
not a
say,
fan of Hillary.
you have no idea the pain that's welling from my testicles right now having to say that. It is
I
radiating
don't need
upwards.
to know the actual source, Ansgar, but thank you.
Well, I had to kick myself in the
TMI,
testicles several times to
TMI.
even utter those words, but yeah.
All right. So, oh shoot, fucking A. More breaking news. Ansgar's testicles say vote Hillary. Okay, great. Did I just say that on the air? It may be that was not appropriate to say on the air. I also think I think we need to I need to talk to like a human resources officer and say, am I allowed to say that my co-hosts? Am I allowed to talk about co-host testicles on? Okay, you know what? I think we
I
have gotten
give
off. So let me try to
consent.
get back on track because I think we're getting into dangerous territory. I think that's a good observation. I'll tell you, I thought Obama probably wouldn't be up for it. And he wasn't the best, but he was actually fucking good. And there's this great image of him staring down Putin, which takes some fucking balls, and he did it. Now, the reality is, I don't think Putin was particularly impressed, but I was impressed that he could do it though, and he just let Putin know, like, you're fucking with the wrong. And then, of course, we get Trump, so Putin wins. But the office made Obama stronger, and he has having made some serious mistakes though. But he just like there's one when we came out, and you just see him looking, and he's taller than Putin too, so he just walks right up to Putin and just looks down at him and gives him this look like, I will fucking murder you if I get the chance. And I'm not saying that out of anger, just so you know.
Right.
We're in a room together. You're fucking dead. And it was just that he did it. I was just like, whoa, never seen that look before. But yeah, we need somebody who can do that and who isn't fucking faking it, because anytime Trump does it, I can't, I have to, when Trump is trying to be serious and trying to be presidential, Medically, I have to not be drinking or eating anything because I could choke or spit up and wipe out my computer or do anything. So it's just not.
Hey,
We need
man,
somebody
he
who, yeah,
100% destroyed ISIS 3 months ago,
yeah, he
and
destroyed ISIS. So,
his mere
uh,
existence is curing cancer. So,
yep, yep. Anyways, I'm sorry we didn't
uh,
cover this at the top of it. We skipped it. I think so. We'll get back to the actual
yeah, we'll
topic,
get
but
back to the
this
topic.
is important and it belonged at the top, and we screwed that up. I think you had asked a question. We didn't get into it. Well,
Yeah.
we
So
obviously
the
want to
last
begin
thing we
with it,
talked
and
about was I had suggested that what if we required sex ed actually be taught by medical
yes.
professionals? It
Yep.
would tie their hands. They would not be allowed legally to give advice that wasn't proper medical recommendation.
I feel like the show has headed south. I'm not reading that one. You read that one.
Quessa to 2001 and were demonetized via test. Well, we're going to be talking about testicles and vaginas
I
and
suppose this is the appropriate,
uteruses,
yeah.
and yeah, that's another thing is people have a hard time using proper medical terms. It's use them.
That's, so you were saying,
So yeah, so what do you think of the idea of actually requiring medical professionals to be the ones to teach um sex ed?
I think it's a good idea. That's why it'll never pass.
Huh. Oh God. Would that even be workable though? Do you think that we could fit that into the budget to actually have a registered nurse, come in? I mean, so I suppose if you
There's already a registered nurse.
oh, that's right, there
It's in the
is.
budget. It's in the budget. It's not easy. It's not.
Mm.
There isn't loads of working room in the budget, but it's in the budget, and you could either give that nurse expanded. There's a number of ways to deal with it. I think it's doable. The problem is, and I think for me, all of this is going to come down to religion. Uh, the concept of abstinence only exists in a number of places, but for this country stems from all of the Abrahamic religions, but principally comes from the Bible, which means and since we're predominantly a Christian country, that's why it comes in. Now, I think, as in many cases in something like this, the facts as presented by any number of studies, which I think we should get into, and I look forward to getting into, those facts um, don't outweigh the feels
Mm.
of God doesn't want me to do this, and the Bible says don't do this. And it doesn't really matter what's best for the country, the people, anything like that. And so long as that's the case, the money isn't the problem. The problem, we should have a national standard. The problem is we are 7 countries. We're not one country. We're 7 countries when it
What do you
comes to
mean by
cultural.
7 countries?
There was a study done. I want to. I can find it, and I'll try to find it, and maybe we could link to it because I think people would find it interesting. That said that the United States is actually 7 different countries. So
Mm.
I live in what would be called, if we wanted to give it a good name, New Yankton. There is, so, and these countries break down. By sort of cultural lines. So where I come from values, above all else, um, intellect and breaking down. So, and this is a very New England thing, actually. But in huge swaths of the South, they don't necessarily mind that, but they value self-sufficiency and independence. So they may say, Nick, you're smart as a fuck, and that's great. But, you know, here's how I've showed up to work every day and not missed a single one. Have you done that? I was like, no.
No.
But to them, that is a value. To me, it's sort of like not a value. And I say, but listen, without study and without understanding problems, how is that? And so we have nobody's necessarily right. It's a very different cultural. And so I saw a thing. I'll try to find it while we're doing this discussion and break it. That the U.S. is, and I had them all down, but it's been a while. The U.S. is actually 7 different countries. It's a spectacular article and a really great breakdown of how we come down. But at least half of those countries uh, are very suspicious of government, and that includes most of course, the anything south of the Mason-Dixon line, and B, um, don't necessarily value studies, experts, stuff like that. So when you have the government saying you're going to take a medical doctor teaching facts about human reproduction, which in their view, by the way, is a personal thing, we should all keep it to ourselves. And I would agree with that if it wasn't killing people. It's actually killing a lot of people. It's killing a lot more people than I think most people understand till you break down the numbers. So, and I think Kitty, yep, Kitty got it. Oh, it was 11, not 7. And I think she's correct. And I think that's the correct link. So thank you very much, Kitty. I appreciate that. That's the article, and I'll look into it and reference some of them. But until all of them agree for the most part on some things, like the value of a democracy,
Right.
the value of a number of freedoms. Some are willing to limit more than less. So we do agree on those, which is what makes us one country. What makes us 11 countries is the ones we disagree on, and the value of the government in education is one of them, and the value of experts of any kind is another. And when you get both of it gets complicated. So until we come one country on that one, I think there's going to be an issue, regardless of funding.
Right. Um, do you think that this should be compulsory?
Yes.
So you don't think that there should even be permission slip? It should just be compulsory.
No, no permission slip. It should be compulsory. Should there be allowable exemptions? Well, for the most part, it's been my experience that there is nothing to which there isn't an exemption under some set of circumstances. So I imagine there's some I haven't thought of to which you could or should say that they should be exempt. I am for religious freedom, and I am for, um, Mormons and Amish and any number of, where people would object to this. I very strongly believe that you need to respect them. But when it comes to when it comes to the health of the society as a whole,
Mm-hmm.
we do recognize exemptions. One of them, for example, is, and I think another one that I know we're going to be discussing soon, is vaccinations.
Right.
I'm sorry. I believe your beliefs should be able to be held, and I believe in some way they're sacred. I'm not necessarily going to respect them, but I respect the right to have them and the sacred nature of being able to have them. Having said that, if you don't get vaccines, you could kill the child that's sitting next to you. No, I'm
Which
sorry.
almost happened to my child.
I know.
Yeah.
And so I'm sorry, you can go live in another country at this point, but the society is going to Bigfoot you. This cannot be anarchy either. We do agree that everyone has a number of rights, hopefully more rights than you find in other countries, but in many cases that's not nearly as true as we'd like to think it is. But nonetheless, if your rights end at where you're damaging the society, and because of the nature of disease, also in particular the nature of poverty,
Mm-hmm.
yes, what you do when it comes to vaccines, sex ed, and a few other things has a profound impact on society. And the difference between societies like the United States, where we have less than a 50% literacy rate, and those countries that you just mentioned in those Scandinavian countries that have over a 99, and in some cases considered to be a 100% literacy rate with no poverty, no, no homelessness, none of that thing. Believe it or not, most of that is sex ed.
Well, yeah. Lack of proper sex education impacts the impoverished to an by a huge margin. You get excuse me. For the most part, most wealthy families are capable of handling sexual education on their own to a degree. Oh, we certainly did. But many one of the things that coincides often with poverty, of course, is lack of higher education, lack of proper education. It's one of the reasons they're impoverished often. And so many parents who are in poverty are not empowered to educate their kids on their own about proper disease prevention, about proper pregnancy prevention. And so no, you're absolutely right. This is it has a profoundly larger impact on impoverished communities than it does in more affluent communities, and that includes, of course, the result of things like abortion or being saddled with too many kids or a great number of things.
Well, and I think it cuts both ways. And I'm trying to. It was Francis. There was a bishop who did this. It cuts both ways. Here's the thing. Um, in 1992, the AIDS rate in Africa was about 4%, which is what it was. Actually, no, it was 2%. Now I think about it, it was 2%, which is about what it was worldwide. 2% was their AIDS rate. Pope John Paul II decided he was going to embark on a mission to convert the entire continent of Africa. This was the most successful Catholic mission in world history. And the Catholics have been around for a while, and they've been doing this for a
And
while.
guess where the highest teen pregnancy rate is in the world?
And it's not just the teen pregnancy rate, though. You're
And
right. You're absolutely,
STDs. Hmm.
and STDs, but it gets worse because here's what happened. Um, this was wildly successful, and as a part of this, obviously, was teaching the Catholic message that condoms are evil, you cannot use them, and in fact, you can't use any form of birth control. Now, we've done a number of studies that says abstinence-only programs. There are two kinds of sexual education. The first is what is called comprehensive sexual education. The second is abstinence-only sexual education, which says that you do not have sex until you're married. Now, if that worked, I'd be for it. The problem is it doesn't work, and there's no amount of wish thinking and saying we'd like it to work, we think it should work, and we feel more comfortable with it, doesn't change the fact it just doesn't work. It doesn't. And I hear arguments for, well, but here's the way to get it to, it's never, nobody who's ever tried it, and states have tried it, countries have tried it doesn't work. Period. And we know why it doesn't work, and there's no rational argument one can make to get out of it. You can't just sit because it's all wish thinking. So you have the comprehensive education, and that would be we're going to teach you about condoms. And by the way, abstinence in South Africa, they had what was called ABC, abstinence, A, B, and then C was correct use of condoms. And I've forgotten what B is. I'll get back to that in a second. But they had a very comprehensive program of which, oh yeah, abstinence, be faithful, condoms. So abstinence, don't have sex unless you're ready, and your abstinence is part of it. But if you're gonna and if you're gonna be married, be faithful. Make sure that you stay with somebody that you know and that you care about, and if you're gonna have sex, whoever it, even if it's with a prostitute, if it's with your partner, or whatever, correct use of condoms. ABC. That was the program. It was wildly successful. The Catholic Church destroyed it. They targeted it. They destroyed it. They also got George W. Bush to cut all financial aid from the United States to any African support groups that taught comprehensive sexual education as part of their program, even if they were supplying doctors to dying people. If they did ABC, they lost their funding. So they had to decide, are we going to save lives but cut out sex ed, or are we going to do medically what we're supposed to do and teach the sex ed as well, in which case we lose our funding? That was the choice they were forced to make. This was the largest single, when I say cause, it was a huge part of, and it was certainly by far the majority cause of, and single largest contributor to the AIDS rate going from 2% to over 40%. 40% of those people are infected.
40%?
40%, 62% of all AIDS cases in the world are in Africa, and it is the good work of the Catholic Church that is responsible for the most of it.
That's
But
heartbreaking.
every 7 seconds, a child starves to death in Africa. Every 7 seconds. Why? Because the high AIDS rate has caused a number of the parents to die. You then end up with single family parents, mothers who have 5 children, 6 children, 12 children, which by the way is reasonably common in Catholic families for this precise reason. But in the United States, at least, there is some kind of safety net, not a great one, but there is some kind of safety net. there isn't one there. So if you have 7 children, you have to find a way to feed them all while being a single parent because your husband died of AIDS. And by the way, there is a 40% chance you're infected with AIDS as well. The country has to spend all its money on trying to keep people alive. Some of the children are born with AIDS, and so they are incapable of producing enough food. They are incapable of producing the money they need to buy the food. And so you end up with the highest starvation rate, and starvation that's hitherto been unseen since the medieval ages, since the Dark Ages. That's what you've got because the Catholic Church was successful in creating abstinence only. And as a result, as well, by the way, there are bishops who want to get in good with the church. So they make sure they push it. But then they start to tweak the truth just a little bit, including Bishop, I've forgotten his name. Was it a bishop? It was, yeah. Bishop Arconia, somebody or other who's Brazilian, who said that condoms cause AIDS. Then Ratzinger came out and said that, and he was speaking like a scientist. It was a scientists don't pontificate on catechisms. I don't think any pontiff should be discussing the science behind condoms. Well, what he said was yes, that AIDS in particular was small enough that an AIDS molecule could pass through a condom, and this was Ratzinger said this publicly and has been saying that. So then what you get is Africans who think that AIDS will cause condoms. Condoms will cause AIDS. And by the way, it's not just because they're that what he said was that the U.S. hates black people so much that the condoms that they manufacture, they deliberately infect with AIDS, so don't use condoms.
Oh, Jesus.
So now you have a child starving to death and it is this profound just fear of sex and
Yeah.
fear of discussing it and handing it over to the church that says we have the solution. Doesn't matter that every single study, everyone
All of them.
that's done it has found that abstinence only programs increase abortions. You'll get more abortions if you teach abstinence only. You will get more teen pregnancies. You will increase poverty levels. So the amount of, and this is why I said earlier when we were talking about the Scandinavian countries, the poverty level of a country is largely correlated to how good their sex education is, because you cannot get yourself out of poverty if you keep having children. Well, just
True.
abstain. Oh, that's a good idea, because other than eating food, having sex is only the largest instinct in the human. Yeah, abstaining is, yeah, anybody can do that. That's easy. And in fact, um,
And I will remind people that while churches like to say that sex is for reproduction, sex is not for reproduction. Sex is one sex is a part of our reproductive system. However, we are social apes, and social apes use sex in very social ways that have nothing to do with reproduction. Sex is a function. In fact, sex has many functions, and one of them is to aid in reproduction. Others is to aid in social bonding, reducing stress levels. I mean, there's a lot of things that sex is used for besides reproduction.
and if you're healthy about it, then you can engage in those activities healthily, and you have a much better, more rounded human being, which is why we choose not to do that here in the United States. But I will say one quick thing too. So in regards to should we teach comprehensive, just based on the science, not on anything else, but what we've learned about what's best for society to keep us happy, healthy, thriving.
Mhm.
Should we teach comprehensive, or should we teach either nothing or abstinence only? According to the American Public Health Association, the American College Health Association, the Society for Adolescent Medicine, the National Association for School Psychologists, the Academy of American Pediatrics, the American Psychological Association, and the American Medical Association all universally agree that comprehensive sexual education is the only answer, period, end of discussion.
Well, yeah, and Sav asks a really interesting question. How young do you think sex ed should be taught to a child? I think it should be taught the moment they're curious. Whatever they're curious about, they should know. In fact, to give you, and it protects from more than just those things. To give you an idea, I'm very, I'm pretty radical when it comes to this kind of shit. My kids, by the time they were in puberty, felt comfortable talking to me about not only their who they're attracted to, what they're attracted to, but even their porn habits. And that's important to me. I wanted to know that at a young pubescent boy wasn't getting into some really, I mean, there's some dangerous, nasty, pornography out on the internet that someone their age probably shouldn't be trying to contextualize. You know what I mean?
Well, and porn addiction is a big thing too, and if they're
Hmm.
hiding that from you, you're not gonna know that there's a problem. Not all sex is healthy. I think that's a really good, that's a great observation. And
Right.
so if you are aware of their sexual habits, you can do your job as a parent and make sure that those are healthy too. Why does keeping a healthy child end at the single one of the single most important things as a human being?
Right. I mean, this is going to sound radical to many people, but my wife helped our daughter shop for her own sex toy. And showed her, okay, no, you're not going to want this, you're not going to want that. This is your first, thing. I mean, I don't see why that's an unimportant thing. I really don't. And it's not a pervy thing. It's not a weird thing. It's education. So we are, for the most part, other than people who are asexual, we are sexual beings and we have strong sexual drives and desires. And part of learning how to be a good, productive human is satisfying those desires in a healthy way. I mean, do you start teaching a kid how to drive once they're already behind the wheel on the freeway, or do you start teaching them how to drive before they ever set, before they ever sit in the driver's seat?
Well, that's a really about
Oh,
what
you're
makes
breaking up.
driving. Nope.
You broke up there for a
Yeah,
second.
I
Go ahead and
noticed that.
start off.
Sorry, I was downloading beaver porn.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, I've been talking to my kids about how to drive since they first started asking about driving. I was just like, well, here's what you got to watch out for. Here's why it gets nerve-wracking. Here's what the lights mean, and I didn't put them behind the wheel, but the second they were able to ask a question, I'd answer it. Now, what you're talking about actually really does sound phenomenally pervy, but that's because of how our culture is structured here, and we come from Puritans, which is the other thing, and we think of ourselves as a really free society, and yet we come from Puritans. Massachusetts is famous for its blue laws. These are the old puritanical laws that included you can't sell liquor on Sundays, and we just overturned that like 3 years ago. And in some cases, you still can't sell liquor on Sundays afternoons. So if you want to go down to the liquor store and it's Sunday, most of the times you're screwed. Sometimes now you can do it so long as it's before noon. And I mean they have to build the store.
Oh, you're breaking up again. I believe we might be losing Nick. Oh,
I'm
you're
one
back.
actually I had a router problem earlier in the house, and I'm wondering if that's what's doing this because I haven't changed anything and nothing is the so if I have an issue I will try to reboot the router. I'm going to not do that yet, but that's bizarre. At least I can tell when it's cutting out because I on the back end I got it. But um we actually
Okay.
our grocery stores have to be built differently because obviously they want to sell lots of alcohol, but that alcohol has to be able to be sequestered from the rest of the store on Sundays, so that people cannot even like look at it. You're not supposed to. So they will cover it with a cloth. They will, and this is all the blue laws. This is all the puritanical shit that we are really saddled with and we don't understand. What you're talking about would be perfectly normal in the Scandinavian countries. I mean, that's do you think that's a healthy way of dealing with it? I don't know, but I think that their suicide rates are the lowest of any country. Their literacy rates are the highest, and by every measure of success that I have, these are happy, healthy people who, by the way, are also living longer and have the highest happiness index in the world, not according to me, but according to both the UN and the World Health Organization. So I'm wondering if this may be a contributing factor.
Well, one of the things that I'll bring up is one of the common objections I get to the idea of sexual education and early sexual education is quote unquote innocence, right? There's this
Mhm.
magical um quality that people seem to think children have called innocence that is ripped from them if they understand the way this one system of their body happens to work. Like, I don't understand what's going to be damaged about a child if they understand what their what one of the systems of their own body, how it works. I don't get that, but there is. It's a magical thinking that there's this special magical quality that they will lose if they gain awareness of something.
Let's talk. That's a spectacular one. So let's talk about innocence for 1 second, okay? Yeah, that's a really good one. Um, Sex can be perverted. It can be weaponized. It can be abused. So can anything. There's nothing. Food can be. There are people who weaponize and abuse food.
Yeah,
Food can be a serious problem for some people. It just is. So, that's people. I mean, people have eaten themselves to death and or starved themselves to death because of how they interact with food in a poor way. That doesn't mean teaching people about food is breaking their innocence.
no,
It's part of life. I do think the innocence of a child is a spectacular thing. I think it has to go away. I think you have to let it go away at its own rate, if at all possible, and that's based again on how much they'll let you know. Really, they don't have a, it's like it's how far they push. When my kids ask about what a school shooting is, they just lost some of their innocence, and there's nothing I can do about it. And I could sit there and lie, or I could answer the question and say this is at least an opportunity to frame it in a way I want to. But some of their innocence died, and I really hate it when that happens. And that hurts me when that happens, but it still happens. But if they ask about sex, I don't sit there saying, "Oh my God, there it is." I'm sitting there going, "I hope they find the right person, and that
right.
person makes them happy, and they can make themselves happy." This has nothing to do with holy shit. But I think you're right. You're absolutely right. And how many people say they would rather their kids see Freddy Krueger on screen slaughtering people than see? I'd
Yeah,
really. This is okay. Take
that was
an
a study, and it
8-year-old.
was interesting.
Oh, you'll have to give me the study that I. So yeah, by the way, I would never do this because this would be unethical. But I am curious.
Mm.
Like if the hypothetical situation, you have an 8-year-old child, you can show them an X-rated movie or an R-rated Nightmare on Elm Street. Which do you show them? I'd pick the X. I would
I'd
pick
pick
the
the
X
X,
without
especially if it's just like vanilla pornography.
just a regular vanilla X. It's like
Right.
so anything with Chloe, a porn star, any
Mm.
porn star. I don't know the names of porn stars, but any, just a regular nice, nice good old fashioned porn movie. All right, so yeah, no, but how many people? I'm curious to know how many people might choose. But I mean, them seeing the X movie doesn't damage them, and if you've told them, if you haven't hidden sex from them. They're not going to sit there and say, "Oh my God, he's hurting her," which, by the way, will happen when kids first see
Yeah, yeah.
intercourse. Even and I've seen, again, I taught high school. I've seen a wide variety of kids with different education, and there are some who would, they'd be sitting there going, "What's he doing to her? Is he murdering her?" No, but that's a problem. Anyways, what were you going to say? I apologize.
Yeah, no, the study, they actually asked, I think it was, I'd have to find the study, but it was, I think it was like 1,000 or 10,000, I forget which. It was somewhere in that range. Parents, if gun to their head, they had to choose, and they named they showed them a scene of it was like a slasher movie with somebody getting murdered with an axe, and then they showed them very much of very vanilla pornography. The vast majority of parents in the United States chose the violence, that they would rather have their children exposed to the violence. than loving consensual sex.
I will say this.
Hmm.
There is a caveat. I think if the slasher was killing the person who made the song Baby Shark, that might be like that would be
Okay,
one that
yeah.
might be a family event. We could all
Or
sit
whoever
there
wrote
and
all
like,
the
oh.
music for Frozen, I'm good with that too.
um, yeah.
Quest gave us another super
No, no,
chat.
we didn't get a super chat. We don't have any more super chats. None
Let's
are in
see.
the
For
queue, I think.
5,001, I think Nick is
Nope, nope.
lying. Nick is lying when he says he doesn't know any porn stars. The cooler people have the most deviant tastes. Now that is so fucking true.
Yeah, that is
uh,
true. That is true. And if I meet any cool people, I will tell them you said that.
Ask Rowley about tentacles. She'll have some fun talking to you about porn.
Oh boy. All right. Well, so where are we on this? Because I think this it sounds like I'm really glad we covered that. How are we doing?
Yeah, I think we're pretty close to wrapping up. So, I'm curious, what would in your ideal? By the way, I loved what you dropped about the Scandinavian countries and the health. That was fantastic. Um, what would be your ideal system of sexual education in America?
You get the American Psychological Association, the Pediatric Association, and actually Pediatric Association is probably sufficient because I think they are actually a subset of the medical association. If they're not a subset of the medical association, then you get the medical association too. But I think the Pediatric Association is to sit down and come up with a comprehensive sex ed that is required. What is the base minimum that just has to be fucking required, and any state that fails to do that risks losing federal funding, and basically far enough down the line could be booted from the union. I am not kidding on that one, by the way, for a number of reasons. I'm just not.
Yeah.
Um, I think, by the way, I'm making it sound like that's exclusive to sex ed. I think we have to be much better about our education in general. And basically, you follow this or you're gone from the union.
Uh,
And the reason is because we do have a country. We have to meet certain minimum standards we are not meeting as a country. This is affecting all of us. We are falling behind, and the countries that can do this and have done this successfully succeed. And they're just happier fucking countries.
And I'll point,
This
there are
isn't
more
rocket science.
conservative countries doing it better than us too. Japan is massively more conservative, and they are doing this much better than we are. So it's not about liberal or conservative.
Their high school students are equivalent to our college students.
Hmm.
Um, yes, there's so I believe this. I'm not actually just saying this to be, hyperbolic or be shocking. I know because I'd never do that. But I'm saying this because I believe part of all education really should operate this way. But certainly, sex ed is included in that, which means if a state is not willing to do it, we have to sit there and say, do you want to remain in the union? And we're not fucking kidding. You are getting federal funds. And I've had this one, I've said this one before too, which is Texas bugs the living shit out of me because thank God Rick Perry isn't governor anymore. But when he was, he kept talking about, we're going to leave the union, man. And he was really, I'm saying, go the fuck ahead. Go the fuck ahead. We don't fucking need you, actually, because yes, we get oil from Texas.
Peace out.
And
Yeah.
yeah, that's a huge part of, I mean, that's great. And that's a huge part of our energy independence. But let me ask you something. 30% of their budget comes from the federal government. Yes, they're paying taxes to the federal government, but the federal government takes that money and distributes it to the other states. They are getting $1.30 for every dollar they put in. My state is getting 70 cents for everything we put in, which means my state, which has better healthcare, better education, is taking our money and helping Texas out, and they still rank somewhere in the high 40s out of 50 states. And they're going to sit there and say that we can't operate without them and that we need them and yada, yada, yada. But they need the FDIC, they need the Federal Highway Transportation Board, because guess what? They're using freeways that my money helped build, but they aren't going to be productive members of our country. They're going to sit there and say, don't mess with Texas. We're the greatest state in the union. No, you're not. Get the fuck out. I'm told that because I'm a liberal, I should get out of the U.S. No, the U.S. isn't good enough for you. Get out. But here's the problem: how are you guys going to make money? You're not making enough money as it is. And yeah, you've got the large supply of the U.S. oil, but the U.S. is buying that from you. So you're not giving it away for free, and you still can't make the economy. Now, who are you going to sell it to? Who are you going to sell the oil to if you leave the U.S.? You could sell it to us, but now we can buy it at a much smaller price because there's no competition. Why? Because unless you've got a military to guard your ships sending that oil off to other countries, guess what? You just lost your ability to sell your oil. Fuck Texas. I'm sorry. And I don't mean that for all the people in Texas. I have some friends who are from Texas. Most of them say fuck Texas too. Those that don't, fine. If Texas is going to even hint about leaving the union at the same time telling me I'm not an American, no, fuck you, get out. Go ahead. I fucking dare you. At any rate, if they aren't going to educate their citizens, and if they don't want to follow a proper American education system, that's fine. That's really perfectly fine. Leave. Go. And I think states should be allowed to secede. I think they should be allowed to secede.
Actually, the same
And
way I
I
feel about
think
art
I
about
think
anti-vaxxers, by the way.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, no, that's a really good point. I hadn't thought about that. You know what? We will. I think we should help. It should be a relocation package. We'll be like Pfizer, and we will say, we will help relocate you to a nice new country. We will buy your home from you. You will give you the
Mhm.
money, and you can go where people, and you can burn with the rest of that country when it collapses because they're not. Go ahead. It's worth the money. We will pay your relocation expenses. We will set you up in whatever country you want that's willing to take you if you don't want the vaccines. But you can't stay here.
Well, here's the thing. We live in a cooperative society. And if you want all the benefits that come with society, you also have to play by that society's rules. If you don't want to do that, go live off the grid in your own cabin in the woods somewhere where no one else has to deal with your bullshit.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
And again, I mean, Texas is a little bit of a trigger just because of that attitude. It's not,
Hmm.
they're not terrible people, and they're not so much. But the reason I get pissed about that is because there's this culture of we're the greatest state in the union, and A, that is irrefutably and demonstrably not even remotely close to true, and B, that attitude makes life a lot harder for everybody else. I'd like you, you know what? Here you go. Here's an idea.
Hmm.
Those of you who work in a nice corporate office, go into work tomorrow and say, I'm the greatest motherfucker here, and this whole place would fucking collapse if it wasn't for me. Peace out. And see how many friends you make. That's Texas.
Oh, that's hilarious.
And by the way, do that while ranking in the bottom percentage of actual efficacy as an employee.
Amazing.
I'm impressed with Texas.
So my ideal, first of all, is we really need to cut into the puritanical culture in this country. Nothing else is going to change until we start moving that back. And I don't even know how we do that. We have such a, you know, I don't think that my parenting style should be considered so fucking radical, but in America, I'm a radical. I really am. I've had people threaten to call Child Protective Services on me because I taught my kids what I would consider proper sex ed. I showed them the miracle of life the moment they were old enough to ask questions. You know what I mean? And apparently that's too much for much of America. So I don't even know where we start, but until we uproot this we've been about 10 to 20 years behind on nearly every social issue because of that puritanical start. And until we find a way to uproot that, we're just going to continue being behind on all of these social issues, ending slavery, LGBT, women's suffrage, all these things we were immensely behind on because of our puritanical roots.
Yep, and I think people don't. It's very difficult. I mean, I think, and we've got all these now other show ideas that we need to do, and I need to either keep track of them more because we're talking about them. I'd love to do a show on correlation versus causality, how you know that ice
Mm.
cream kills people. But because we covered that, and you were talking about that earlier, and then yeah, we also talked about doing a show on how science is misrepresented. Those are two, but that ties into it. But one of the two is our own self-awareness of who we are as a country is we're the greatest country in the world. We really are, except that our literacy rates are terrible. We have infant mortality rates that are the worst of every industrialized country in the world. I mean, any country that has actual medicine, ours is the worst. But the good news is we pay more than any other country in the world by a significant margin as well. So we pay more for health insurance and medicine, and we get worse results. This isn't a guess. I'm not making this up. Multiple organizations, and when I tell people to, the UN says it's like,
America.
oh yeah, but
Fuck
the UN
yeah.
lied. Yeah, exactly. So, oh God, no. And that attitude is just, oh God. I'm not triggered. I'm not triggered. I'm not triggered. And there's a mod too that just like when I said that, you don't do that in your office. And the mod was of course like, well, unless you can back that up because he thinks it's the best fucking mod on the planet. Whatever.
I wonder which mod that might
Don't
be.
say it. We're done. The show's over. Thank you. Good night, all. Good night. Where's the button? Where's the button? Where's the
Bye.
button?
I have it here. Would you like me to press it?
Huh. Good night, all. Yes. Now, please.
Are you
Thank you.
sure?
Don't say the name. Don't say the name.
Tony
We're
Designs.
leaving.